This is not just an old coin. It is a surviving piece of history from one of the most powerful nations the world has ever seen. The coin you are looking at is a 1986 Soviet Union 20 Kopeks coin, created during the final years of the USSR. At first glance, it may look simple, but behind this small object lies the story of power, war, politics, fear, and the collapse of a superpower. For millions of Soviet citizens, coins like this were part of daily life. Workers carried them to factories. Students used them for transportation, and families spent them on bread, tea, newspapers, and basic necessities. These coins traveled through cities, villages, train stations, and markets across the Soviet Union. Nobody imagined that only a few years later, the country that created this coin would disappear forever. The Soviet Union was officially formed in 1922, after the Russian Revolution and Civil War. It became the world's first major communist state and eventually grew into one of the largest countries in history. The government controlled factories, farms, media, transportation, and much of everyday life. During the 20th century, the Soviet Union rose to become one of the world's two major superpowers alongside the United States. This rivalry created the Cold War, a long period of political tension, military competition, and fear of nuclear conflict. Although the United States and the Soviet Union never fought directly in a full-scale war, both sides competed in weapons, technology, espionage, and space exploration. The Soviet Union wanted to prove that communism could compete with Western capitalism on the world stage. On the front side of the coin is the famous Soviet emblem. At the center are the hammer and sickle, symbols representing workers and farmers united under communist ideology. Surrounding them are wheat branches symbolizing agriculture and prosperity. At the top is the Soviet star, one of the most recognizable political symbols in modern history. Every detail on the coin was designed to represent the strength and identity of the Soviet state. The reverse side contains the large number 20, the Russian word for kopeks, and the year 1986. The design is simple and practical because Soviet coins were made for everyday use by millions of people across the country. But 1986 became one of the most important years in Soviet history. The country was facing economic decline, corruption, shortages, and growing public dissatisfaction. Factories were becoming less efficient, and the Soviet economy was struggling to compete with Western nations. At the center of these changes was Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev. He introduced reforms called perestroika and glasnost in an attempt to modernize the Soviet system. Perestroika focused on restructuring the economy, while glasnost encouraged more openness and freedom of discussion. These reforms were meant to strengthen the country, but instead they exposed deep weaknesses inside the system.